what happens
Uh-oh.
the next day?
Uh-oh, we got a sticky maple on our hands.
XOXO, da-da-da-da. XOXO Riverdale. Riverdale.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of XOXO Riverdale. It's me, Louie Pearlman.
And Kate Vatter.
And we are here today to talk about episode 3, Body Double. This is a great episode. We're super excited to discuss it. But before we do, Kate, what's the Riverdale news update for the week?
Hot news. Hot news based on speculation, based on Instagram stories.
Yeah, but this is fun though, yeah.
They're fun. So we saw Rob Rico, who plays Joaquin, was getting a meal with a lovely little lady who he tagged in the picture and said, follow her, she's a serpent.
So perhaps this is another character.
Right, and perhaps we're getting Joaquin back.
Which should be really exciting as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Joaquin back in season 2.
I like Joaquin.
Yeah, Joaquin's awesome.
Big Joaquin fan.
And there was another big piece of news that was sort of, you really sleuthed this one out. This is pretty good.
I know, I'm pretty good at this. We see, I can't remember if it was Camila Mendes or Lily Reinhardt's Instagram story, where they're in a large room throwing banana peels into a trash can from far away. And you can see the actors' chairs lined up around the outside edge, and we see one for Fred.
That's awesome.
So we don't know what episode they're filming right now.
And we don't want to spoil any big plot points, but
we're not sure if Fred was going to come back.
Yeah, we just didn't know if Fred was going to return in the series, and we don't know what episode they're filming.
Yeah.
But it's looking like Fred will return, at least for one episode,
right?
Which has already been confirmed, but we're thinking they're already a little further into their shooting schedule than that,
right?
Which means Fred may be appearing in a few more episodes of the show at the very least.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting because we love that character and we love Mr. Handsome who plays him.
Yeah, Mr. I assume Lucas Perry?
Mr. Lucas Perry Esquire.
Yes. DDS Esquire.
Yes, exactly.
And it was Camilla's.
It was Camilla's Instagram.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So, I think that we should delve into Body Double.
Jump right in.
All right, let's do it. So, we open where we left off with Cheryl being interrogated by Sheriff Keller
and Principal Weatherby.
Inexplicably, Principal Weatherby is in on the interrogation. I feel like there would be more anonymity, or you'd give the students some space. Their principal wouldn't be there.
Also, legally, I don't understand why the principal was there.
No, it doesn't really make any sense. I could see other police officers being there.
Yeah, or like a lawyer.
Or a lawyer, yeah, but certainly not. So that was really strange.
Yeah.
And then Cheryl says right off the bat, when I said I was guilty, I didn't mean that I was guilty with killing Jason. What I meant was that I was guilty of not revealing what was actually going on with Jason and I that day. And I really like that because it hints at a larger complexity to the story that I don't think the show has completely revealed yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really, really smart and is one of the things that made us hooked on the show.
Yeah. Well, she drops a lot in that scene. She also says that Jason wanted to leave Riverdale forever. She says that he stayed dry and he said he'd call within the month. But she doesn't know why he wanted to leave. And that Jason and Cheryl both heard the gunshot.
They heard the gunshot together.
Jason was at the very least alive for the gunshot. And also, it was determined that he died on July 11th, which is over a week after that gunshot.
So where was Jason in the interim? And a later scene in this episode conjectures as to where he was, which we will get to.
This is also at the beginning when we first meet the Blossom parents, who are meanies.
They are terrible.
They're bad parents.
They are They seem to care more about other needs that have nothing to do with Cheryl's well-being.
Yes, and in a previous episode, Alice speculates that they are perhaps to blame, and now I understand why Alice would think that someone could kill their own child.
Definitely, but that's also just horrible Alice accusing people of horrible things that are not fair, which is pretty typical of Alice.
Right.
Because Alice in this episode is still a disaster.
Yeah.
She still isn't being written as smartly as in future episodes.
Yeah.
And we will get to that as we move on. But people that are watching the show for the first time and following along with this podcast, that is something that I want to say. Stay with Alice. The writers understand her voice much better as the show continues.
Yeah. She gets given some more space.
Yeah.
And it's actually the very next scene when Betty says, who held Jason captive?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that he disappeared on the 4th and he died on the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Betty's assumption.
That someone was holding him captive.
She doesn't even say, I think maybe that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
She just declares that someone was holding him captive.
Yeah, when there could have been a plethora of other reasons why Jason wasn't found and wasn't killed until the 12th.
Right.
Maybe he successfully was escaping.
Yeah.
You know, it's very strange that she thinks this.
Yep.
But it seems to be cemented as being what everybody assume happens in that world.
Yeah.
Due to that scene, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. Another thing in that scene that happens that I really like is Betty criticizes her mother for printing a headline that basically indicts Cheryl as the killer.
Yeah.
And I really like that because I just think it's a great character move and hints towards Betty's overall kindness, which is great.
Yeah, because in the episode before, she's basically attacked and accused by Cheryl, but she still cares about Cheryl.
Mm-hmm. Which is great.
Yeah.
Which I love. So then
Archie goes to the police.
Yes, Archie goes to the police.
The policeman, the one police.
Yes.
Police
because
singular.
It seems like there's just this police chief just dealing with all this.
Please.
And he lies and covers for Miss Grundy by saying that he was with Vegas.
Yes, he was with Vegas and he was working on songs. And that's somewhat notable only because it mentions Vegas. Our favorite character in the Riverdale universe. Number one character.
Number one character of all time. Yes, so it's pretty good.
Sent to heaven above all other characters.
Yes, Vegas is a good boy.
Yes.
Then, in the next scene, we wanted to discuss this. We've got Veronica saying that she has a date with Chuck Clayton. Chuck Clayton is a football star. He's a jock. We're going to get into the specifics of Chuck Clayton's comic book origins in a later segment of this podcast, so get excited for that.
Ooh, baby.
But yeah, ooh, baby. But there we are. And Kevin says
he thinks that Chuck Clayton is just the hottest.
Yeah.
Which he has also said about Archie.
Mm-hmm.
And we know he has hooked up with Moose and many other boys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who is Kevin's type other than boy?
Yes. So Kate, how do you feel about this?
I feel like they wanted to give some gay representation.
Yeah.
Which is fair, but then also put in the minimal amount of effort. And they're like, hey guys, we're cool with gay sex. See, here's a gay character and he likes boy.
Mm-hmm. And he's going to talk about it. Yeah.
And all of them.
And as a gay man, speaking for all of gay America.
That's true.
Because yes, that's my role in this podcast.
Well, yeah, and it's true that you like all boys.
Yes, it's true. I like all boys. Now, I believe that Kevin's preferences are slightly more nuanced. He seems to like the lean, athletic type.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why he rejects Moose.
So harshly.
Really harshly, because Moose's body, he's a little more thick. And maybe that's why, but it's so mean.
We've also only ever seen Moose in a varsity jacket.
That's true.
Which are very unflattering.
Yeah, we don't really know what Moose looks like.
We have no idea.
Body type wise.
I mean, we know that he's great face wise.
I know. We both have a big crush on Moose.
We both love Moose.
We think he's adorable. Yeah. So I do think it's an interesting move that he seems to love this wide swath of different types of guys. And he seems to be pretty boy crazy, which leads to some interesting plot points as the show continues.
Sure does. And then we have our first little Betty Jughead.
We do. We do have our first little Betty Jughead scene, which is really showcases their dynamic. And it seems to be a fairly good dynamic, actually, to start.
Yeah, she doesn't give him total freedom at the Blue and Gold, but she gives him a good amount considering she's the only current employee.
Well, I think she sort of reins him in. And I think that is actually something that the character needs. Jughead needs to be reined in. He's sort of all over the place. And this is the beginning of the Jughead character having more of a focus. She wants him to hone his writings and use his writings for his novel as prototypical articles for the Blue and Gold, which is really smart and really, it's
very Capote.
It's very Capote, and it's an interesting scene.
Yeah. And then Archie goes home and gets grounded.
Yeah. So you have some thoughts about this.
I have some thoughts about how bad Fred Andrews is at grounding. So I nor my siblings were ever grounded, and not through poor parenting, but through good behavior.
Oh, I'm sure you guys were all perfect angels. Yeah.
Nothing that warranted grounding.
Yeah, I was never grounded either. Grounding, I don't know. Grounding, it's a punishment that I understand it to be. You revoke teenagers' freedoms.
Yeah.
By, like...
taking away their phone and, like, TV privilege.
Yeah, taking away their phone and TV privilege.
They can't go to that party that weekend.
That's right. They're taking away their social privileges.
Yeah.
As a punishment.
Right.
Sure. So,
now, Fred's punishment is that Archie must be home by 7 p.m., which is what time teenagers would come home on a weeknight if they're allowed to do whatever the fuck they want after school.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
They can go to all their clubs.
Yeah.
They can hang out with friends. They can indeed have dinner before coming home if they have to be home by 7.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
7 is like so much freedom.
I guess these kids are running around in Riverdale until 11 p.m., which is one of the reasons why they're all in so much trouble in the first place, because there's just no parental controls.
Yeah, and part of me is like, I wonder if that is like what teenagers were like, and I just wasn't like that.
It's certainly not what I was like. What I was like was more closer to what you described before. I was certainly home for dinner around 6:30 every night, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I would like go to sports. I would go to practice for drama club or something, and
for
then I
sure.
would come home.
Maybe like later on, maybe when I was these kids' age in 11th and 12th grade, maybe on a weeknight, very rarely from time to time, I would have dinner with some friends, but that would be a really special occasion.
Yeah.
We would really only do that on the weekends, Friday night into Sunday, and that would be it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. But,
so, well, Archie is punished with a capital P.
Continue to change absolutely nothing.
Yeah, nothing about his life. Although it does factor into this episode, as we will soon discover.
In it worked out this one time.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, I think we need to discuss the nature of the date that Veronica and Chuck have.
They go to Pops because it's literally the only restaurant. I don't know that they even have a grocery store.
No, it seems like everybody in Riverdale just feeds themselves from Pops.
All day, every day.
And then they're in the car hanging out. Seems like the date is going quite well.
Yeah.
Seems like Chuck is an okay dude.
Yeah, well, he says he's on varsity football. He's on the dean's list.
He's a good boy.
Selfies. Yeah, he's a nice little boy. And he says that Veronica's different from all the other girls.
And then what happens? The next day.
We got a sticky maple on our hands.
So let's dissect this for a moment.
So first and foremost, Veronica asks, what's a sticky maple?
Yeah.
And the response is what it sounds like. It's a Riverdale thing.
Yeah.
Which what it sounds like to me is that someone was like eating waffles or pancakes, did a very poor job. So like a 5-year-old was eating waffles or pancakes, got maple syrup all over their hands, and now it's all sticky, and then they like touch something, and now that's sticky, and it's just there's sticky maple syrup everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's totally a fair assumption as to that's what it means. And I think that it is a lot of explaining around the censors.
Yeah,
in order
once you find out what it is, it's pretty clear what they're alluding
to. Yeah, and just to lay it out there, it's photoshopping a selfie of someone so that they have maple syrup on their face.
Like splashed on their face.
And it's supposed to make it seem like the person in question is loose or
Yes.
a slut, as opposed to just a young woman going about her life trying to be dating, which
Yeah.
I totally empathize
Now,
with.
what would you say is the target demographic for this podcast?
The target demographic for this podcast,
Yeah,
I'd say
like age-wise?
geeky adults like us.
Okay, cool. So it's
Yeah.
very clearly a cum shot is what we're
Yes,
trying to get at.
yes. Okay, yes, that's what we're saying. We're allowed to say that. Yeah,
Yes.
totally. And that's, that's all fine, and for the audience of the show, I totally understand.
Yeah.
And it's okay. However, what's not okay about it is it's a little too vague in certain ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like the vagueness of it actually detracts from the seriousness of how abusive it is to
Yes.
treat women like this on social media.
Yeah.
And it detracts from sort of an important issue that the episode deals with. Although I do feel on a scale of 1 to 10, I give this episode a good solid 7 or 8 as to how it is dealing with this issue
Yes.
overall. But they have to sort of skirt around this whole thing as to like what's actually going on here.
Yeah,
and I
then
don't
they
love
have
that.
to like introduce it to address it.
Yes, they do.
Which is-
Absolutely. It feels a little like issue of the weeky to
Yes.
me. Yeah.
Very like after school special.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Veronica will not have it.
And that's a great thing about Veronica in this episode is she advocates for herself immediately
Yeah.
and advocates for a lot of other women in this episode too.
Right.
Which speaks towards Veronica's inherent goodness,
Yeah.
which we're going to discuss a little later on as well. There's
Right.
some stuff to say about that.
But at this point, so Veronica goes after Chuck
And she
Into
does
the-
it in a really gratuitous way, which is great.
into the locker room with shirtless boys.
Yeah, there's a lot of
There's so
steamy,
much that goes on here.
steamy flesh. Just,
Archie in a towel.
yeah, Archie is in a towel.
And then Chuck says, well, we're not exactly in virgin territory because of the 7 minutes in heaven with Archie.
Totally.
What did they get into in that closet?
I know.
Like, what?
This is really the
I feel
beginning
like-
of...
No one on the show has ever had a sexual interaction, but they all want people to think they are.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And you know what? I haven't thought about it this way yet, but that is a very traditionally Archie Comics feel to
Also,
that
it's like
whole
a
plot
generic high
point.
school thing. Like, everyone wants to seem like they're more mature than they are.
It is a generic high school thing, but I'm going to make the argument that, a 7 minutes in heaven closet thing in an Archie comic would be treated in a much more heavy vein than it would be IRL. And that's
Yeah.
what I think makes this so traditionally Archie comics, is it's like, what are you going to do for 7 minutes? Maybe you're going to do a little bit of groping and a little bit of kissing, right?
Yeah, I guess
And
like
that's
high
it. With-
schoolers have like a quick shot. You can maybe get in like a handy J or something. But
Maybe. I mean,
mean-
that's really,
yeah, and they got to be sober going in there. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah, you're really stretching it. And
yeah.
they've elevated it to seem like Veronica's pregnant with Archie's
Yeah, it's just
children,
they like raised a family in the closet.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. In the 7 minutes.
Oh my god. And then Chuck tells, this is my favorite,
Hmm.
Chuck tells Veronica that she's in bulldog territory now.
And then Chuck and his crew arf at.
Yeah, they bark. They bark at her.
They bark at her, which is really very on the nose, but I like that they're dealing with it,
Yeah.
they're really showing this male aggression.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've never, like, my high school mascot was this dragon, and no one, like, roared.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, we don't know what noise dragons make, so I guess that's fair. Maybe this happened in other high schools,
Mm-hmm.
where they would, like, bark. But then my college was a husky, and we didn't bark at each other.
No, because it's aggressive.
It's
and
insane.
it's crazy.
And also, like, I feel like it's, like, embarrassing.
It is.
Like, no one would want to make that noise.
Yeah, I agree with that. I 100% agree with all of that.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
So, next.
Ooh, Cheryl. Thanks, Archie, for supporting her.
Mm-hmm. By coming clean,
and
and trying to help her.
Yeah.
And then she says she wants to grant him a favor, and nothing... One wish. But nothing is off the table except for her body. And it's like,
Why?
who is she?
And who does she think Archie is?
Yeah, who does she think Archie is? And who are all these kids that would even be on the table? Like,
Yeah.
this is a little too, in my opinion, this is a little too on the nose of painting these kids to be sexual beings, which they are, which I think is
Yeah.
a strong point to the show, but it's a little too much like, see everybody, they're having sex sex is happening. Sex is happening all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
and again, maybe that's what high schoolers were like. It was not what I was like, but...
And it's cool that they live in this fantasy world where it's a little more torrid and this is what high schoolers are more like.
Right.
It certainly is not what I was like either as a kid. And I know that there are certain situations where, you know, there's more, you know, where high school age kids are more sexual, or high school age kids are less sexual. It's fine.
Yeah.
But there is something about the writing, I think, overall in this episode when it comes to the sexual aspects that's not totally hitting in the right way. And I think that that's sort of what we're finding as we go through this episode and critiquing it.
So when I was in high school, I was like, man, I think it's crazy that, like, you know, we're not like high schoolers on TV. There aren't, like, a lot of, like, ragers and parties and, like, people getting drunk. And then, like, 3 years ago, I was like, oh, I just wasn't invited.
Oh, that's fair.
Oh.
Yeah. And we all certainly had different social situations in high school.
And it's someone, like, as a writer and knowing other writers, I think that's maybe what happened to the writers in the room for Riverdale. And they were like, no one had parties. And they're like, oh, no, I just wasn't invited. I guess this was happening. Like, they don't know what was really, like, what the limit was in high school because they weren't around the people that had the time to do that.
Yeah, and I was at a lot of ragers in high school, but I wasn't having any sex in high school.
Yeah.
So I was sort of on the line.
Yeah, the hardest I partied was like with the drama club, which that SNL sketch, the after party sketch, is
perfect, right?
To a T. Like, yeah, I walked around with some guy's baseball hat on and wouldn't address it. Like, that was too real.
Yeah, and such is the background that we all stem from as geeks.
Yeah, it's real cool cats who host a podcast about a teen show on the CW.
The CW teen drama that we love.
Yeah.
So now, I think...
Oh, also throwing it in, Chuck calls Veronica a hot jalopy.
Oh, yeah, we forgot. Yeah. Okay, so that's a weird expression for Chuck to use.
For anyone under the age of 85 to use.
Yeah. And
do you remember where you were on D-Day? No? Then you wouldn't say that.
Yeah, exactly. It also sort of alludes to Archie's jalopy that he drives in the comics, which I think is I think it's intentional, and I think it's kind of fun. But it's weird. It's weird, man. The next thing we want to talk about is the whole scene where all the women are gathered.
What I would say about to lemonade.
Yes, they're about to lemonade, which I think is a great reference.
Ethel is Beyonce.
Yeah, and we're introduced to Ethel Muggs.
Played by Barb from Stranger Things.
Yeah, played by Barb from Stranger Things.
Poor actress, no one knows her real name.
That's her real name. Her real name is Barb.
Her real name is Barb from Stranger Things.
And first of all, it's great to be introduced to Ethel here. Ethel is a wonderful character in the comics. She is, in a lot of comics, crazy about Jughead. And she's after Jughead, and Jughead keeps rebuking her. She's portrayed in the comics as being like an ugly girl. And I really like that they reposition her to be sort of this character who's attempting to empower herself.
Yeah, because she's still like... I mean, the actress is very pretty. Like, wearing kind of dowdy clothes.
But I think her clothes are really cool.
Oh my god, they're so cute. I would wear all of them. But I think they're trying to position her as this, like, geek who doesn't
she's wearing, like, a cardigan and stuff. She's maybe a little more...
fit in.
She's weird. She doesn't fit in.
She's a weirdo.
She's wearing this cardigan. She's definitely a little more bookish, I feel.
Yeah, very, like, librarian chic.
Yes, she's super librarian chic, and we love her.
Yeah.
And then, like, Cheryl busts in and wants to, like, stop this meeting because practice is about to happen for a lot of these girls.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, this feels out of character for Cheryl. It feels a little odd. Like, Cheryl is a lot of things, but I don't think that she's someone who's going to clearly walk in on something going on with all of these girls and then try to hurt their power or their autonomy. You know, it doesn't feel very Cheryl to me.
She's bothered because they bring up that Jason was involved, but she wasn't there when they mentioned that Jason was involved.
No, she has no way of knowing unless she remembers that Jason used to hang out with Chuck.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's conjecturing a lot, and that's a lot of us having to make the leaps as opposed to the writing and the performances making the leaps for us. Yeah.
And we get the great disc, Frida Shallow.
Yes, and then she calls Veronica Frida Shallow, which is very mean. Oh my.
Very mean. Love it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work it into my vocab.
Totally. Then, the next thing that we wanted to address, that we wanted to discuss, I think, is Jughead at Pop's
But nope, that's later. This
sorry.
is the first instance. We'll get to Jughead at Pops. But first we have Jughead approaching Dilton Doily while he's in charge of the Scouts and asking if he heard the gunshot that day.
Yes.
And Dilton says no.
But then...
Oh, no, you're right. We are there where the Jughead does go to the young little Scout.
Yeah, Jughead goes to this little baby Scout who's a Pops, and Jughead interrogates him because he thinks that there's more information to be gleaned from these Scouts.
Right.
But Jughead does it by eating the little Scout's sundae.
Yes.
Which I love because it's really the most Jughead way to intimidate someone that I've ever seen.
Right.
And I think that's so smart and so... It's really funny.
Yeah.
And it's a really well played scene, and a well written scene as well. Mm-hmm. It's very, very cool.
And we also learned that Doily shot the gun on July 4th.
Mm-hmm. Doily shot that gun.
Which we know is not the shot that killed Jason.
No, but Doily doesn't want to talk about it.
Right, because he was still out in the woods shooting a gun without telling anyone except for these small children.
Mm-hmm. Which is not allowed in Riverdale land. You'd think it would be, but it's not.
He's a hardcore survivalist, but that is not allowed. And then the next scene, Archie sneaks out.
Yeah.
We go through this whole thing in episode 2 where Fred knows when Archie sneaks out.
And has known since he was 7.
And since he was 7, and he knows when he snuck out for the run, and it's weird that he just lets him sneak out at all hours, but he lets him do it anyway, and then Archie sneaks out and Fred doesn't notice.
Yeah, and that's crappy. That's crappy continuity. Yeah. Crappy writing. It's like, well, that whole plot point and scene was for naught the episode before.
This is what writers' assistants are for, to just, keep the continuity.
Absolutely.
And they messed it up.
Maybe we should be writers' assistants on Riverdale.
I don't want to make a big deal, but I both watch Riverdale and have writers' assistants experience. Hit me up at kvatter.com. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Very good.
Thank you. Love it. Love your work.
So then,
good references.
Where's Archie sneaking to? He's sneaking to watch a band practice with Josie and the Pussycats.
Right, which is what Cheryl granted him.
Yes, Cheryl granted him this. Now, this is all kind of weird because they have a pretty good conversation about race and about these girls' experience as women of color.
Right. And they're called the Pussycats because they have to claw their way into rooms Archie can just waltz into.
And I like this. I think that this is a good take on the Pussycats. I mean, as white dude, I'm not going to say, me liking it doesn't matter. But what does matter is I do think it fits with this portrayal of the characters in a really smart way.
Yeah.
And I like all of that. And I like that they address that Archie probably can't write towards their experience. And, and I understand that very much. And
Archie's very out of touch.
And then Archie says...
Right, Josie says that her mom got hate mail when elected mayor, and Archie says, I campaigned for her. I get it.
No, Archie, you don't get it. You sit down. You don't get a seat at this table. Yeah, exactly. You don't get a seat at this table.
This is not for you.
So that's all kind of interesting to me. And then after that whole conversation, which I think is actually fairly well handled and very smart, and Archie acquiesces and says, I think you're right about this.
Yeah.
He starts chiming in during their practice about, methods to perform their song. He suggests flipping 2 of the verses. Mm-hmm. He does this whole line change where the line is paintings on the wind. Yeah. And then he changes it to paintings on your skin. And they really like that. Why they like it, we don't really know, because also, the songwriting isn't highlighted enough in the show.
It's insane to me that no, teenage girl could come up with paintings on her skin instead of paintings on the wind.
I know.
I don't know, I was a teenage girl once, and I was, a bubbly teenage girl, but also, I could have come up with that.
I feel like you could have too, Kate. Absolutely.
I think literally any teenage girl.
I agree. I very much agree with that. So Archie chimes in these 2 little suggestions, which are really not that stellar in our opinion. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the Pussycats are like, oh, race be damned.
Yeah.
Let's let this little redheaded twink write for our black lady experience.
I wouldn't put him quite as a twink.
No, you're right. He's a redheaded muscle jock. But yeah.
I don't know that he's that big either. I get confused on the categories, but
I know. So do I. Story of my life. Anyway, but yeah.
I don't know. I think you're a beaver. I don't know.
So I don't know. I don't love the way that scene plays out. No. I think it kind of defeats the entire point of that scene existing the way it plays out at the end, and I don't love it. It's not my fave.
But then we sneak into the school, and Kevin loves fashion, guys.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, they're in this really heightened situation. Cheryl, like, basically busts them.
Yeah.
And Kevin is like, but by the way, I love your boots. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, come on, stop it. And this is also, I think, an example of the writers beginning to find Kevin's voice and it going better for Kevin as the season continues.
Yeah.
We're still sort of in rocky territory here.
Yeah, they're still just like, oh, he's there, so we have to make him speak, and we'll just make him gay. Make sure everyone remembers he's gay, because we have to keep driving it in, because that's his only defining characteristic.
Yeah, and as someone who can speak for all the gays
Right?
in America, this is #problematic, and I don't love it. It's not my fave. You know, in the comics, we've talked about this in this podcast before, Kevin loves yarfing down milkshakes and burgers with Jughead,
Yeah.
and also loves comics. This does not come up on the show. It sure would be fun if it did.
Yep.
Just saying, it would give that character a little more depth.
Yep,
He's
literally
a-
anything.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
And
Anyway.
you know what? He could be into model trains. He could be into literally anything except for, like, fashion and boys, and I'd be like, great, okay.
Yeah, you're not just a gay stereotype.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, boy.
Oh, man. But we do see that Jason, they find the burn book, and Jason mentions Polly several times.
Yeah, and then it leads
He
us
calls
to...
her a shy, reserved girl.
It leads us to believe that maybe Jason was as sleazy as Chuck Clayton is,
Yeah.
which
we'll
is
see
terrible.
But he does keep pursuing her.
He does, so this is yet to be revealed, so we will not
Right.
spoil it here, but what
Yeah.
Jason's motives were the whole time.
Yeah. And our next scene, cover girl, cover girl, cover girl.
Yeah, this is a scene where Betty puts on lipstick.
Some cover girl lipstick.
Some CoverGirl lipstick, and then her mother and her have a fight about the type of lipstick, CoverGirl lipstick, that's appropriate for Betty
Right, I
on
don't
her
remember
CoverGirl face.
which one she wanted, but Alice wanted her to wear Pink Perfection.
Yeah, Alice wanted her to wear Pink Perfection
I
instead
believe
of...
this is the episode where while it was airing,
Oh, was this the episode where
Cole
Cole Sprouse
Sprouse
tweeted CoverGirl, CoverGirl?
Yeah, just
Well,
all caps.
Really, really appropriate.
Yeah.
Really
he's
appropriate.
Correct.
Yeah, this scene is, the product placement's a little on the nose.
Yeah.
And also in the scene, once again, Alice takes like a napkin or a makeup wipe of some sort and like wipes Betty's lipstick off her face, which feels so intrusive to me and so inappropriate for a mother to be doing with her teenage daughter. It's just gross. It's stop touching Betty.
I'm a little on the border about that. And I will also say that when she wiped it, there was still some left, and that was like the perfect color.
Totally.
Like, as any woman who has tried to do a bold red lip, you have to plot.
Yeah,
So-
for sure. And like, it's funny because you thought that that was on the line okay for her mom to be doing that.
Yeah.
And you, whenever you see Miss Grundy and Archie together, you're like, no. And with me, with Miss Grundy and Archie, I'm like, this is fine. And so we clearly have different thresholds for uncomfortableness
also,
on the show.
A mother-daughter relationship is very different from a teacher-student.
Exactly. Yes, I do agree with that. Very much so. Absolutely. Okay. So then Archie confronts, we want to talk about this. Archie confronts Fred.
Right, well, Fred catches him sneaking back in.
Which of course he does. A doy.
Right,
like,
he should have caught him sneaking out.
Yeah, a Dilton, doily.
And Fred says, you don't get to do whatever you want when you're grounded. But it seems like maybe he can do, like, most of what he wants.
Well, he gets to stay out until 7, so...
Right.
Yeah, so
And
he does that.
This has, I think, one of my favorite lines in the show, which is, so Archie tries to kind of haggle his punishment, like, well, my music's going to be performed, I have to be there. And Fred's like, you can't do that. And Archie then says, you have to own it. And it does.
Walking away from Fred. And
my theory
I don't
is
understand
that,
what that means. What do you think it means?
My theory is that they were improvising or they had more lines, and at one point KJ Apa did say that line, and then they just threw it in the editing. They just like spliced it in.
I think that's fair because they needed KJ to have an exit line.
Right, but
in
that's
the
not
scene.
the exit line, because then he says, would you have stopped me if I had a football game?
That's
not his
right.
exit line.
He just walks by his father and then turns around and confronts him.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because you have to own it. It's like in the middle of
Yeah,
it
they
all.
need to cut that. They cut that shit out. I don't
Get
get
a new editor, Riverdale.
totally. I don't get what that means in the scene.
It's so bonkers.
There's no context for it.
We don't know why it's there.
And then Archie says, if it was a football game instead of my music, would you be doing this? And Fred is speechless. And Archie
I will
is
also say
very emo here. Very emo.
something to say too is that like his own music is like if you stop him from doing that, it doesn't affect other people. But if you pull QB out of the game, like there's like a whole rippling effect where it affects a lot of people.
That's true.
And like it's a shitty thing, and like you shouldn't allow Archie to do it because it is punishing Archie, but also you're like punishing the whole football team.
Yeah, this is pre-formation in this world of the Archies, so it's not like it's not like he grounds Archie and then Betty's like, but where will I play my cool keyboard riffs?
Yeah.
You know, spoiler for if the Archies ever get formed on Riverdale,
right,
which I would love.
I don't see happening.
You don't see it happening?
In the foreseeable?
I could see it happening in season 2. I could totally see the Archies forming in season 2.
Potentially for like a talent show, but I don't think they would like take off.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't see them. And by the way, sorry, my mistake. Betty is the tambourine player.
Oh, she's percussion.
Yeah, Betty's tambourine. We should go through this. This is important for everybody to know because I think it totally fits with the Riverdale characters.
Okay, so Betty's auxiliary percussion.
Yeah, Betty is auxiliary percussion. Juggy is drums.
Okay.
Which is the cutest thing ever to watch Jughead playing drums.
Yes.
It makes perfect sense. Veronica is keyboards.
Okay.
Which totally makes sense to me because I feel like a girl with a really good upbringing would have some piano background. Yeah. And Reggie is bass.
Okay.
And Archie is lead guitar.
Mm.
And I love this lineup and hope that this is the lineup for the Archies on the show. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Sorry for that little dovetail, but I think it's important.
We have Dark Betty.
Okay, so this is the reveal of Dark Betty. So,
Dark Betty, bam, lam.
Here she is. She is in this black wig. She seems to have developed this alternate sexual persona for herself.
She refers to herself as Polly.
She refers to herself as Polly and refers to Chuck as Jason. I don't love the way this plays fast and loose with split personality disorder.
Yeah.
And also just with, like, if they're trying to do a role-playing thing, like, none of it totally makes logistical sense. And, like...
It clearly catches Veronica off guard.
And it's also, not to be too spoilery, but it's not really dealt with in the rest of the season that strongly. Or it doesn't hit it. And it's like, I don't love this. I don't love any of this. And it's interesting because this is definitely a place where me and the fandom diverge. Because the fandom likes this. The fandom is into Dark Betty, it seems. It seems like there's a lot of, like, Dark Betty memes and, like, fanfic online, you know?
We see, like, a kind of slightly dampened version of Dark Betty, which I do like. Mm-hmm. But we have not seen that yet. Right now we just see balls to the wall, the darkest Betty.
Yeah, this is the Betty from the darkest timeline.
Yes, the darkest timeline Betty. And for anyone who thought that Chuck looked 30 years old like I did, he is 26.
So he's getting there.
He's older than most of the cast, but also he looks 30.
Yeah, in that scene where he's in the hot tub, he looks
30.
He looks #old, which neither of us are. We're youthful and young.
We are full of youth.
That's why we're doing a Riverdale podcast.
Because we're both 17.
We're both 17.
Don't tell our moms we're out after 7.
That's right. Yeah, I'm grounded right now. I need to be home by 11:30 at night.
I have to be home by 11:30 p.m. on Wednesdays.
Exactly, on Wednesdays, yeah. I love it.
And our next scene is at the first annual Taste of Riverdale as the lead up to the 75th anniversary Jubilee. This is a scene about the adult.
Okay, so I want to address just once again, Alice in this scene behaves in a fashion that I feel is completely socially unacceptable. Like, in a way that, like, I feel the other adults in the town would be like, is everything okay with Alice? Maybe we should call social services. It's just bananas, and it's just bad writing, in my opinion.
She asks Penelope for a quote on her son's death, like, paparazzi don't even do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Penelope, very understandably, punches Alice in the face.
And Alice deserved it.
And you know what? Alice deserved it. To quote one of my favorite movies, Scream, bam, bitch went down. Bam, bitch, super bitch.
Starring Riverdale Skeet Ulrich.
Yes, starring Riverdale Skeet Ulrich. Yeah. And so there's all that. And, like, this is difficult, I feel. Because, in my opinion, we learn a lot about Penelope Blossom later. That's Cheryl's mother. We learn a lot about her later. This is the episode where she's introduced properly.
Yeah.
And I feel like any mother that has lost her child, it is emotionally understandable that you would be violent towards a woman saying, hey, you know.
Yeah. Death of a child tends to break up families.
Yeah.
It's devastating. It's like
devastating.
The worst thing that can happen to someone is have your kid die.
It's legitimately unspeakable, you know, and so this doesn't really reveal anything about Penelope that she would punch. Yeah, like, of course she would. You know what? I'd punch Alice for Penelope.
Yeah.
And I'm a lover, not a fighter.
No,
you know, I'm a nice boy.
I technically have a black belt, but I don't think I deserved it, and I don't think I could throw a punch without hurting myself more. But
Sure.
I would do it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like, in the rest of the scene, Alice is just on this, like, tirade of horribleness. Of legit awfulness, because then
she tells Hermione that her daughter got a sticky maple.
Yeah, she basically slut-shames Veronica, which is really uncool.
Well, she says that a sticky maple is slut-shaming, what they call it when sluts get shamed.
So she's basically calling Veronica a slut in the scene to her mother's face.
Yeah.
How dare she? What parents speak like that about someone else's child?
To their face.
None of this makes
Speak about
to their face.
Yeah.
None of this makes any sense. Like, I'm just really confused, to be honest here, about her motivation, about why she would be doing this, why that's at all helpful to be saying those sorts of things to Hermione. It's such an odd scene and definitely worth addressing, right? Yeah.
So weird. And then also while they're there, Fred hits on Grundy.
Yes, Fred has a conversation with Grundy.
But he's now
like father, like son.
Old for her.
He's a little too old for her.
But they're also at least both consenting adults.
Very much so. And
it's also still kind of inappropriate that it's the son's teacher, but like not nearly as inappropriate as the Archie Grundy.
Certainly. And that also in that scene, he says, I have to ask you a question. What made you take a liking to Archie, take an interest in my son? And she says Archie's just a really special kid, which is so creepy. But I do think this is being played for, like, maximum creep factor, and this makes a lot of dramatic sense to me, and I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? Are you cool with it? You seem to be not as cool with it as me.
It's hard to say I'm cool with her being like, he's a special kid.
Well, no,
I'm just... From a story writing standpoint, absolutely.
Yeah, from a story writing standpoint, it really heightens what's been going on with these characters. Right. Which I think is good. Archie
is there because the Pussycats perform his song, and he runs into Jughead, who says that Archie's just there for the locally sourced mustard, which I just don't know where Riverdale is.
Mm-hmm. Anytown, USA, there's mustard somewhere around.
I don't know what season it is. I don't know.
It's the season, I think it's still fall. It's the season of...
Yeah, but Archie's, like, sweating to death and then wearing a varsity jacket like it's the middle of winter.
I know, they just want to give Archie a lot of sweat, is what they want to do.
I don't know what's going on.
Glistening off his Archie body.
Yeah.
And then this is cutting back and forth between the Chuck Clayton intimidation scene.
Yes, where Betty straight drugs him.
Yeah, Betty drugs him and then tries to drown him.
And boil him.
And then Veronica really saves her friend from making a lot of unfortunate choices. And I just want to make note of that because that is going to lead into a discussion we're going to have slightly later about this. Because Veronica is very much on the side of the angels for this entire episode. Yeah. She advocates for other women. She uses her own situation to help other people. She looks out for her friend. I just want to point that out.
Yep. And then it ends with Betty pouring syrup all over Chuck and calling him Jason. Mm-hmm. And I bet that smelled delicious, if we're being honest.
I bet it did.
Next, Fred forgives Archie. He soundproofed the garage wearing glasses.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just like, I want you to be productive while grounded. Which is like, I don't... Did he think he invented the word grounded and that's like why he's just making it up as he goes along? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I think that he doesn't have a good grasp on what grounded means.
No, he has no idea. All.
And then we end up having there's consequences.
Right.
To this whole sticky maple thing.
Betty does deny calling Chuck Jason in her self-apology.
Yeah, so she doesn't remember, which is really strange.
Right.
Yeah, very, very bizarre.
Yeah.
And then we get to...
Good and evil, light and dark, Betty and Veronica.
Yeah, Betty and Veronica's fates are sealed according to Jughead's noir-esque narrative.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put the brakes on this for a second. Who's good and who's evil in this dichotomy?
If we're going this from A-B, it puts Betty at good and Veronica at evil.
Yeah, in this episode, that is not the case.
No.
Veronica's very good in this episode, so I don't understand why this conclusion's being made. You know, I've already pointed out all the evidence of Veronica being really well behaved in this episode, and I feel like Veronica gets the short end of the stick here a little bit. Veronica is not evil. Veronica, I don't like it when Veronica's portrayed as evil in the comics either. I think it's non-three-dimensional writing of her. Veronica comes from a really unique perspective. She's not evil, though. She's just rich. There's a difference between being rich and being evil.
Yeah. And
so,
then light and dark.
It's problematic. Light and dark. So light hair, dark hair.
That's the best we can come up with.
Betty wears a dark wig in this. Whatever. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Don't know what that is. And then we get the great voiceover line that I wrote in quotes. So Chuck is cut from the team.
Mm-hmm.
An action, though no one knew it at the time, would have terrible consequences in the weeks to come.
Bum, bum, bum. So we're going to be looking for those terrible consequences, faithful listeners, as the weeks go on.
We see Betty and Cheryl together burn the burn book. As Cheryl admits that maybe Jason hurt people too. Maybe
Jason was a little more three-dimensional than Cheryl was admitting at first. Which leads to a more complex plot points as the show continues.
Yes. And then our final scene is Dilton interrogated in the office of the Blue and Gold.
Yes, and we're going to discuss Dilton slightly in our next segment, actually.
Oh.
Because it's time for our power ranking and crush list. So let's go down our power ranking. Kate, what do we got here?
Well, we have a couple people we did not really hit on this week, which would be Reggie, Moose, Hermione, and Kevin.
Reggie doesn't have any lines in this episode.
Moose does not have any lines.
I know.
Hermione doesn't really do anything.
No.
Kevin is plastic.
Yeah. Bad Kevin this time.
So from the bottom up, down at the bottom, I put in the Blossoms.
Mm-hmm.
We see them treating Cheryl not like they should treat their own child.
Definitely, but definitely as a power ranking, they do have sway over this episode.
Right.
Yes.
Grundy, always bad. Weatherby doesn't do much, real creepy. Mayor, she like
Mayor
overstepped.
McCoy?
Yeah, Mayor McCoy. I don't know what her whole deal is.
No, totally.
Sheriff Keller?
Yes. So Sheriff Keller was at number 10 on my list.
Yes.
Because he is certainly driving a lot of the plot of this episode by basically being a good sheriff, but also allowing Principal Weatherby in on private discussions, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah, no idea. Next up after that, we have Alice.
Who comes in like a tornado in this episode and never stops.
Yeah, she's a wrecking ball.
Yeah, she really is.
Right above her, we have Chuck Clayton.
Yeah, who is a despicable character. We hate him. But boy, he really drives the narrative.
Waves.
Yeah, he makes waves.
And
not just in the hot tub.
Hey-o! I put Archie above that. I know you didn't even think it was worth talking about Archie.
Yeah, well, tell me why you argue for Archie there.
I think he wasn't a huge mover and shaker in this episode, but I think some of his actions lead further.
Mm-hmm.
He has a real influence over the Pussycat.
He certainly does. That's a good point. That's very valid. I would argue that Josie, who I put at number 9, has more influence over Archie than Archie has over the Pussycats.
She does rank higher. We have not gotten to her yet. Above that, we have Cheryl.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't put Cheryl on my list, but yeah.
Fred.
Yeah, I think Fred plays a big part in this episode.
Yeah.
By his non-understanding of what grounding means.
Right.
Basically.
A delight. He's a delight.
Yeah, he is. He's a real treat.
Got Dilton Doily.
Yes, and Dilton I have fairly highly ranked as well.
Yeah.
This is a great version of Dilton. Dilton in the comics is really just a very well-meaning geek who often makes a lot of inventions that get him and the Archie gang into trouble. He's also best friends with Moose.
Okay.
I like that Dilton is sort of this geek tyrant in this series. I love this portrayal of Dilton, and I hope to see more of him in season 2.
Okay. We got above that, we got Josie.
Absolutely. Josie makes a lot of waves in this episode. Yeah. And plays a lot of chords.
Yeah.
And writes a lot of lyrics. And wears a lot of ears.
Indeed. Above her, we've got Ethel.
Yeah. Ethel advocates for herself in this episode, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to see.
It's cool to see women that aren't the same old women over and over again.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Above Ethel, we've got Veronica.
Yes, totally. Veronica does so much in this episode. And is very, very virtuous and really sort of drags Riverdale High out of the Stone Age when it comes to its treatment of women and cyberbullying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, she's a big city girl.
She's not going to stand for that.
Above Veronica, we have Jughead.
Oh, Juggy. Yeah, this is the beginning of Jughead playing a real role in the show.
Yeah.
And I love Jughead as investigator. I think it's such a smart move for the writers to position him as such. And I think that, as I said before, this version of Jughead is completely iconic. And as a Jughead fan, I just adore him. Yeah.
And then our number 1 is Betty Cooper.
Mm-hmm. We both had Betty at our number 1.
I'm
sorry.
I had Betty at number 2.
That's right.
She averaged out to number 1.
Yeah, she averaged out to number 1. I think Betty's very good in this episode.
Yeah.
She really does a lot in this episode. And the whole Dark Betty thing, despite the fact of being #problematic,
right,
is really, really... the influence is felt throughout this entire episode.
Yeah. But then our true forever number 1.
Vegas! We love him! All right, who did you have for your crush list?
I have my top 3 is Veronica, Josie, and Jughead.
Why? Go through each one.
Veronica is a strong woman. She stands up for what she believes and is still being caring and nice. She's not a bully.
Yes, that's true.
She's strong and she's not a bully.
I do wish she would have given Cheryl a dressing down in this episode for her Frida Shallow remark, because it's so mean and somewhat racist.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah,
totally. It's awful.
We got Josie, who... This is, I think, the most we've seen of Josie.
Yeah, and I like Josie in this episode.
And she doesn't take it from Archie. She admits when there's... I mean, they're not good lyrics, but in pretending that they're good lyrics, she is willing to
pretend
admit...
land,
She's willing to admit that there's good lyrics, while still, like, standing up for what she is and who she does.
And I would argue, just music-wise, that the snippet of the song that we hear from the Pussycats, in terms of it being an original song, is one of the better written original songs in the series.
Oh, for sure. Better than anything Archie's written.
Yeah, like, it just, like, holds together as an actual song with structure that I could see teenagers playing at an event like that.
Right.
And I'm also really happy that it's not another very weird cover of an 80s or 70s song.
Yeah. And then Jughead.
And then Jughead for you. Yeah, so I had Jughead at number 2, so we can start with him and talk about him. He's really coming into his own. He's eating people's sundaes.
He's got a cutie face.
He's running around wearing good clothes. I love him in this episode. My number 1 crush is Ethel.
Yeah.
I love the way she's portrayed. I love the clothes she's wearing. I love that actress.
I love her hair.
Her hair looks fabulous. I have a big crush on her. Number 2, as I said, was Jughead. And then number 3 for me is Dilton, who I think is super adorable in this episode. Yeah. Very weird acting, but very cute. And I love the way they dress him, especially at the Taste of Riverdale. He's wearing that big chunky jacket. I think,
which is like exactly what high school boys end up wearing, because they it's their dad's old jacket, but it doesn't fit them. And
I totally agree. Yeah, I really like this portrayal of Dilton and think he's a real cutie patootie.
Yeah.
So he's number 3 for me.
Great.
Oh, so those are our rankings. And now, one more segment today. I'm going to talk about Chuck Clayton.
Do it!
So, I don't know how much do you know about Chuck, the origins of Chuck from the comics?
Not at all.
Okay, so, Chuck Clayton was invented in 1971. His first appearance is in Life with Archie 110.
I believe he's the first black character.
He is. Yeah. And his first appearance is very milquetoasty. He's introduced. He's just another one of the gang. There's nothing that really stands him apart, which I think was intentional on the writers. And it's 1971, and it's, predominantly white writing staff who are writing the Archie comics, and they're just trying to be like, look, this guy's just like everybody else. He belongs in Riverdale, which I have no problems with. His dad is revealed to be the coach of the football team.
Yes,
that's from the comics.
The show as well,
Yes, absolutely. So that's all there. And then as we get to learn about Chuck, he has a girlfriend. Her name's Nancy Woods. He's really good to her. He is an aspiring comic book artist and an athlete. So he's like a fairly well-rounded, artsy, nice dude in the comic book series. So I really feel like, as a series that doesn't have a lot of canonical characters of color, this episode really throws that character under the bus.
Okay.
And it bothers me, to be honest. And this episode aired during Black History Month. And I think that really revels in a lot of Afro-American stereotypes.
Yeah.
And it kind of upsets me that this is the route that they decided to go with Chuck. And of course, like, I'm super into the fact that they have some actors of color portraying these traditionally white characters. Some of the other ones, like Reggie, Veronica, Dilton. I think that's super, super cool. But I really wish they had made Chuck to be on the side of the angels.
Yeah.
I'd like to be seeing more of Chuck in this series and not have Chuck be a slut shamer. It really bothers me, to be honest, and it's disappointing. They could have invented a new character for this. You know, I don't get why they decided to make it Chuck. I feel like this is a real misstep by the show. Now, if you want to see like lovely, fun, awesome Chuck in action, I would recommend checking out the series Life with Archie, issues 1 to 12. They came out in 2010 and in 2011, and they feature grown-up versions of the characters who are trying to make it, you know, in Riverdale as adults. And Chuck is trying to run his own comic book store. And it's really fun and really revels in the whole comic book geek thing and shows Chuck to be a really good, lovely guy who's trying to provide for Nancy. You know, it's good stuff, and it's really, really fun, and a much better version of Chuck Clayton than we get on this episode.
Sorry, just got...
This is flying in hot off the presses, hot off the nets.
Hot news, hot news!
Unless IMDb is lying to us, Luke Perry appears to be in the entire second season of Riverdale.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see, you guys. But Chuck Clayton, he deserves better than he gets in this episode. Read some comics and learn about him. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode of XOXO Riverdale, which is pretty exciting. Next week, we're going to grace you with
Last Picture Show.
The Last Picture Show.
Which I've seen that episode maybe more. I think I've seen episode 6 the most, and then maybe that's the one I've seen the second.
Episode 4 you've seen. Yeah. So you're going to have a lot to say about Last Picture Show.
Yeah, I have a lot going on.
And that also is the most Jughead-centric episode so far.
It's big for Juggy.
So get excited for Jughead fans, and get excited for fans of the Riverdale town infrastructure and how it gets altered through the course of the season here on XOXO Riverdale.